Most projects need text at some point, but where do you start? What are the options, and how about animating it in OpenToonz? Well, with recent improvements to the text options, I thought it was time I took a look. So that's what I'll be doing today. Hello ladies and gents, and welcome to today's video. If you're new here, my name's Darren T, and I make weekly tutorials for OpenToonz and the occasional animation. If that sounds like the kind of thing you're into, why not subscribe and follow along? With recent changes to how you can choose your font for adding text, I thought it was time I went through some of the possible options we have when adding text to our animations, including how you can bend and animate it. And as with many of my tutorials, as I want to show a few different techniques, I've put links in the description so you can jump to any of them directly. And as text in OpenToonz is just objects on a page, everything you can do with any object, you can do with text. So I'll be covering a lot of ground quickly, and no doubt you'll have ideas of your own. So to get started, we'll be using the Type tool. Now this isn't a text tool, the difference being that once you add text, it can't be edited in the way that text from text tools can. It paints the letters on a page. You can't change the words, just delete them and re-add new ones. So to get started, we'll be using the Type tool. And the Type tool works on vector levels, so we'll add a vector level. And then we'll choose the Type tool from the left hand side here, and at the top you can see the options available. So we can choose the font to use, we can change the style to be bold, regular or italic, and you can change the initial size of the font, although we can resize that later. And finally you can tick this box to write the text vertically, but we won't do that today. So to add text, simply choose the Type tool, click on the screen and start typing. And while still in edit mode, you can click in between the letters to move the cursor so you can continue typing there. And if you've got another style in your palette, you can choose that and it'll continue in that new style. And when you're finished, just click outside of the box and the text is committed to the page. So one of the new features for the Type tool is that the fonts are written in their own font style in the font chooser to make it easier to pick your font. So if I pick one here, it'll now use this font for typing. As I click and start typing some text, you can see it's written in this new font. And now you can see the actual text on screen. Before you click away, you can actually change the font to a different font and see how that looks. And while you're still in the edit mode for the text, you can click in the font selection and use the cursor keys to move up and down to move through different fonts and see how they look with your text. So you might not have this font preview on your version of OpenToonz, and that's because it's a brand new enhancement that's available in the latest nightly builds, but will hopefully be out in the new official version soon. So again, to complete the typing of text, just click on the page somewhere and the highlight box moves from around the text. But once it's been written, the text is no longer text to be edited like text. It's created as filled shapes with a border. So if you've made a spelling mistake or need to insert some text, you need to use the Select tool to highlight the text. You can move it out of the way and then you can re-add new text in the middle. And then of course you've got the issue of aligning the text to make it look like a single piece of text. But you can use these guidelines on the outside of the text to align them up, or you can use the cursor keys either on their own to move a large portion, with the control key to move a small tiny amount, or with the shift key to move large amounts. So you can use the Select tool to highlight the text and to move them. Once selected, you can also resize it. So let's highlight this, and just by dragging a corner you can resize it to any size and shape. If you start dragging and then hold the shift key, it locks the ratio, so it goes larger and smaller but keeps the same ratio between the height and the width. And of course there's the squares in the centre of the horizontal and vertical parts of the section to resize them. And finally you can hit the control key before you grab one of the drag handles to deform the shape by using shear on the sides and on the bottom, or by dragging a corner either outwards or inwards. You can also edit them in more detail using the control point editor to personalise the font or to fit your animation theme. So if I zoom in slightly and then select the H, and you can see the control points at each corner, which you can then click and drag as you can for any other object. You can affect the curve by clicking on the line itself or using the drag handles. Or you can hold the control key and add some more control points in there. And as a filled object, you can use all the colouring techniques that you can with any object. So if I add a new colour here, and I can fill the letters either one at a time by just clicking inside the letter, or by changing the type to rectangular, freehand or polyline, and I choose rectangular here, and I can click and drag around a number of letters and it fills them all. But as you notice, it filled the centre point as well. And of course you can also add a gradient to the fill. So let's add a new style, change it to be a gradient fill, and then change the two colours to go from, say, blue through to a green colour. Change this back to normal and fill in the H. You can then use the settings to adjust the angle, to change the smoothness and the X and Y position of where the fill colour separates. So as I said earlier, the text put onto the screen with the type tool is just drawn as a filled shape with an outline. So of course you can change the outline as you choose. So to see the outline better, let's just change the fill colour. And you can simply change the thickness of the outline, but it might not work quite as you'd expect, because it doesn't just change the external size of the line gets thicker around its centre point. So you can only use this so far. And let me show you. So if you select your text using the selection tool, at the bottom right you'll see this line here, and if you hover over it you'll see the pump tool. So you can simply click and drag on that, and it'll make the outline thicker or thinner. And you can see the value changing at the top right here on the toolbar where it says 1.03. So you could just type into the box here, so I'll type in 3 and press enter, and you see it immediately gets thicker, or back to 1. But if you use the pump tool you can see better that the line is getting thicker around the dotted centre, which means it gets wider around the letters but also comes into the inside of the letters, which isn't necessarily what you want. So to make it go just wider we'll use a different technique. And what we'll do is we'll bring the outline back to 1 or even 0 to remove it altogether, and then we'll duplicate the text into a second column and then we'll colour it differently and resize it there. So there's two ways to do this. One, you can just select all of the text, choose copy and paste it into a new vector level, or you can select on the cell, go to the cells menu item and choose clone, and that'll create a new level. And you can change the name for the level if you want to, so I will do text background. So this is the new background level, so I'll rename all the columns and then move the background behind the text. So what we need to do then is to select the text in the background. If we highlight that, and we can change that thickness, and that'll change the thickness of the text in the background, but it's obscured by the red letters in the front column. So if I hide that front column, you'll see that's exactly what the back column looks like. So let's bring the front column back. And then of course in the back column you can simply change the colour if you want it to highlight in a different colour. So let's make that more of a purple colour. And as the text objects are drawn in a column, you can also apply the OpenToonz effects directly to them. So as an alternative way to add an outline, we can use an effect. So if I hide this background column, there we go, and then go to the schematic, and you can see we're on the FX schematic. If it's on the stage schematic, you can click the button at the bottom right, it'll change from the stage back to the FX. So if we add an effect to the text column, and if we go to the matte category, we can choose erode and dilate. And if we turn on the preview mode so we can see the effect straight away, double click on the effect node, and then we can just type in the radius. So there's not a lot to change here apart from the thickness of the radius and the type of the outline. So if changing from circle to square, you can see the edges of the letters looking slightly different. And of course you can add any other effects to the text. So common ones you might add would be blur perhaps. Let's bring this down a little bit. And another common effect you might choose to use would be the glow effect, which is in the light section. And as I said before, just play with the values and see what works for you. So I'll introduce a different colour, a bit of yellow into the glow, and you'll see a bit of a yellow highlight on there. And using an effect to add an outline, instead of editing each text line separately, is useful if you want to affect lots of text consistently. So you might add one thickness to some text, and then add some more text and change your mind about the thickness, then you have to go back and change the words you've previously added on screen. And using an effect like this does it in one place. So it could be useful for a column that has all one type of text in it. So if you're building an animated comic, you might put all of your speech bubbles in the same column, for instance. They then have the same look about them. And there's plenty of other effects you could choose to use. So go ahead and experiment and see what you can make. And of course you can use the Animate tool to animate your text. So let me just add some on here. So firstly you need to extend the text across the time you want to animate it. Choose the Animate tool. Set the center position because that's where all animation will work around. So we'll put that on the bottom. And I want to adjust the scale. So what I want to adjust for this example is just the vertical scale. So on frame 1, I want the vertical scale to be 0. And then by frame 24, back up to 100%. Then that'll show the animation moving where the text move upwards. So let's extend this text slightly further. And then in the second column, we'll do the same again. Change the Animate tool, put the center at the position we want to move about, and then change the scale. So let's see how that looks. And of course you can animate with any of the properties available on the Animate tool, as I did in my last video where I animated the position of some text for the intro to the collaboration. The next way to animate is with a custom brush. And I'll talk about custom brushes in another video, but in brief, whatever you draw on a vector level can be used as a brush. You just copy the file from your project's drawings folder to a custom styles folder and then restart OpenToonz. So let me show you. So you can see in the X sheet that the level is called AL. All we need to do is go to the drawings folder inside your project, find the level file which ends in .pli, so it's al.pli, select it and choose copy. And go to the custom styles folder inside library, inside your OpenToonz stuff folder, paste it in here. Here it is. You can then rename it if you choose. So I'll just call this custom brush.pli. And make sure you don't remove the .pli extension. And then we'll restart OpenToonz. So now if you go to the vector section of the palette, you'll notice there's a very tiny thumbnail. Just here is your new vector brush. So we can go to the paintbrush, increase the size of the brush, add a new style, and then for this new style we'll choose the new custom brush. And now as you draw a line, it'll draw the line initially until you release the brush, then it'll replace it with the text. And if you want larger text, you just increase the size of the brush. And your custom brush also works with the geometric tools, so if I choose a single line in here, I can draw a straight line, and it'll use your custom brush, again increasing the size to increase the font size, and it gets larger. And even though this is drawn as text, it is still actually only a line behind the scenes, which means you can use all the tools on this custom brush line as you do on a normal line. So for instance, if I change to the control point editor, I can then select that line, and you'll see the point here at the end of the line, the point at the start of the line, and I can bend that line to make the text follow along in that rough direction. And the smaller your font, the more neatly it follows the line. So if I add another line here with smaller fonts, go to the control point editor and then change the line, you can see how it follows it. And of course this means as a line you can use tweening to create animation. So I'll show you that very quickly. So here you can see me drawing a straight line with a custom brush. I then open up the level strip and duplicate that drawing. I insert 9 blank frames in between the two drawings. I adjust the last frame's line to be a curved line. I then select all the frames and choose the in-between option. And this animates the line from being straight to being curved. I then drag all the frames into the X sheet, I put them all on 2s, and I then use the swing option to extend the play range and play them in reverse. And this allows me to play using repeat. Now this is only a glimpse into custom brushes, but I hope you can see the benefits already. Finally, to use text flexibly or to animate it in the most flexible way, you can use the plastic tool. Now you can just add the plastic tool to the text itself and animate each letter individually, which will work in some circumstances but isn't necessarily what you want. But let me show you how you do that. So again, we'll add a vector level. I'll add some text. I'll put it on quite large. So to use the plastic tool, you just click on the button in the toolbar, you hit create mesh, you adjust the size of your mesh by dragging this slider around, and the smaller your mesh edges, the more precise movement you can make, and the larger they are, the more general the movement is, and that'll be fine for today. Now the mesh is only added to the letters themselves, so when we come to build the skeleton, you can only build the skeleton inside the green areas. So let's just build that. So I'll create one vertex point inside the letter A, I'll create a few inside the letter B, and nothing inside the letter C. And then when we come to animate, this shows what you can do with each letter. So with the letter A, all I can do is move it relative to the previous point. So that moves in a circle there, and if you untick keep distance, I can move it closer and further away. The letter B, again the first point, allows it to rotate around the previous point here at the centre, the root point, but then I can bend each of the other points to make the letter animate. And the letter C I can't do anything with because I've got no bones attached to it. And the animations of A and B don't affect any of the letters on this drawing. So the other way to use the plastic tool, and the way you most likely want to use it, is to animate the text as though it's on a flexible cloth. So all you need to do to be able to animate it is to draw a rectangle or other shape on this drawing that covers all of the letters before we apply the plastic mesh. So let's just remove this plastic mesh by selecting the column and hitting delete. So back in the letters column, I choose the geometry tool, a rectangle, I'll make sure the auto group is selected and choose autofill. And then simply draw a rectangle around all of the letters. And then when we create a plastic mesh, by clicking the skeleton tool, create mesh, it creates a mesh that matches everything that's in this drawing. So I'll click apply, and because I previously had a mesh for this level, it asks what I want to do with it, so I'll delete the old level entirely, and then it'll create a brand new level for this. So now I can simply delete the rectangle, but you can't edit a drawing that already has a mesh level on it directly on the table. So what you need to do is to go into the level strip, and then double click in there, and then we can edit the drawing in here. So we select the rectangle, hit delete, and you'll see the letters that were hiding behind it. Now when we go back to the X sheet and look at the table, we've got the mesh covering the rectangle, and we can still see the letters. But now if we go to the plastic tool and apply a skeleton, when we go to animate, it's going to animate the whole mesh as though the whole rectangle is part of the drawing. So let's move that over there. Then we can move B, we can stretch that, and then move C. If I turn off keep distance to make it easier. So let's just put that into a quick animation. So if I right click on one of the vertices, I can set a global rest key, which restores all the points back to their first positions. Halfway through the animation, we would adjust things slightly. And then back at the end, we'll add a global rest key. So let's just see how that looks. And if we hide the mesh column, there's the animation. So you can see using the plastic tool in this way is much more, well, flexible. So to finish, I'd just like to share a few examples of some animations I've put together using the type tool and some of these techniques. So this uses two of the techniques I've already shown you. So the first one is using the plastic tool to apply a rectangular mesh over the word trampolining, and I deform that as the time moves by. And you can see the keys in the X sheet, they move the whole mesh up and down. And this is in a sub X sheet. So I repeat that 3 times. Then on the 3rd time, I bring in the words Made Easy and adjust the camera. So you can see the camera box zooming in as the words Made Easy appear. And I've also applied a fade onto the words. The next one uses a fade effect on the word ghosts, a simple move from left to right using the Animate tool, and the word zombies at the bottom is built using the plastic tool, which I've manipulated to bring the word into view as though it's climbing out of the ground. And finally, on top of that, a hand-drawn effect to simulate soil being knocked out of the way as it climbed out of the ground. So let's take a quick look. So again, I've put this into sub-X sheets, and the most interesting part is really the zombies word. So let's step into there. Okay, so if I show the plastic mesh that fits over the word zombies, and then you can see how it's manipulated. So it basically acts like a single sheet of material with the word zombies written on it, and I slowly lift one side up out of the ground, then the second side, and finally I bring the centre up and level it out. So using the plastic tool on text doesn't have to be for simple deformations, you can actually use it to add character to your words. And finally I've built the Star Wars scroll, which is built from static text initially, and it changes to the hand-drawn text of the word OpenToonz that I try to draw in the style of the word Star Wars, and that's just animated using the Animate tool and the scale option. And then there's a sub-X sheet here with the crawl in it itself. So if I step into there, and you see that contains its own sub-X sheet with the text in, and then the fade out that sits at the top, and that's for the text to go behind. So let's step into the actual sub-X sheet with the text in it. And you can see all the text is just written as a block of text. And there's lots of manual fiddling to make it look like this, because there's no justify setting to make the text appear at the left and then stretch over to the right. So I simply used the select tool, highlighted some of the words, and then moved them towards the right. And I did that line by line until all the words looked in the same style as the original Star Wars scroll. And then you can see the key here is just the animation of moving the text upwards, very, very slowly. And if I step out of the sub-X sheet and go to the schematic, you'll see I've added a distort to the text using the free distort node. And if I just show the preview of that text, you'll see it's been brought inside that shape. And I did that by adjusting the corners of the free distort option box. And that gives it the shape. And then you see here I've got a matte out using the fade out column, so the text fades out toward the top of the screen. And finally, I added the Star Sky FX node, which created a column to get the stars in the background. And you can find that in the effects list under Shaders, Star Sky. So there you go, adding and animating text. There's lots of ways to get imaginative with your text, so why not have a go and see what you can come up with. And if you've got any questions about this or any other part of OpenToonz, just leave them below and I'll try and help. And as always, give this a like if you enjoyed it, share it with friends that are working in OpenToonz, and subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post again. But I'll be back next week with another video. And that's a guarantee.